What's going on, y'all? It's Johnny J back at it again with another video. To be more specific, I'm back at it with another reaction video. Big ups to Geekuk, I think that's his name, for making this video. It's called Stop Sleeping on Vinland Saga. Now, the reason I'm doing a reaction to this video is because I have been watching Vinland Saga episodes on my channel. Definitely go check those out. And I've noticed that they aren't really getting as many comments or views or likes as my Berserk videos have gotten in the past. And I don't know, I kind of wonder why. Maybe because Berserk has been out for, of course, it's been out for a longer time, and it's been able to develop this cult like following. And Vinland Saga hasn't had the opportunity to do that, but it doesn't really seem like it's going in an upward motion when it comes to its perception, when it comes to people's public opinion of it and hopping on the Vinland Saga train. So I'm just really curious as to why that is. It's a pretty interesting storyline. It occurs in like the 11th century and is dealing with the Vikings. Maybe that alone isn't really that interesting, but it's for some people. But it's a pretty good timepiece type of anime that I like so far. So let's see what Geekuk has to say about, or Geekuk, I don't know, man. Hopefully I said it right the first time. But let's see what he has to say about this Vinland Saga. Stop sleeping on it, baby. Let's get into it.
This video is sponsored by Bookwalker. If there's one genre that seems to be cursed for anime adaptations, it's the big historical epics. Berserk, Vinland Saga, Vagabond, Kingdom. These are the four pillars of the seinen manga world people set their profile pictures to in order to say, my taste is better than your taste, and also I have a massive penis because I am of the superior race called a manga reader.
What the hell am I doing? I can't read.
And for good reason too. These are four of the greatest manga to ever exist, yet seem to be doomed to a cursed life of no anime adaptation, or even worse, actually getting one. People were dissatisfied enough with the first Berserk anime that they tried again, 2 times, somehow getting worse with each attempt, and most people don't even...
Were they dissatisfied with the first one because it ended where it ended at and it didn't continue? Is that why they were dissatisfied? Because that's why I was kind of dissatisfied. But as an overall story, I thought it was pretty good. It really got me more into the Berserk world. So that's just my thoughts on that. Let's get back into this video.
even know that Kingdom even got an anime, despite the fact that it had stunning, gorgeous, absolutely breathtaking use of CG. Compared to Berserk 2017. So when Vinland Saga was announced to join the ranks of getting an adaptation, everyone had one important question to determine if this adaptation was doomed like the rest. Does Vinland Saga contain really bad CG? I mean, it's alright. For one of the most critically acclaimed manga of all time,
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad.
I don't think it's that bad. I'm sure thanks to the seasonal anime graveyard that is Amazon Prime. But as someone who pimped this title out a few years ago, of course I wanted to give a bit of a spotlight to a source material I consider to be a masterpiece and an adaptation that so far seems to be doing it justice. There will be some mild spoilers for the first 4 episodes of the anime at least, so there's your warning. But really that just encompasses the prologue of this tale, which is actually a prologue to a much bigger tale. So really it's just like the prologue to the prologue. Vinland Saga is fundamentally a revenge story from the perspective of our main character Thorfinn, who is taken under the wing of his father's killer Askeladd in his band of mercenaries. His father, Thors, was murdered because one day he got tired of being in the MCU for so long he jumped ship and started a new life in Iceland without fulfilling his contract obligations. And of course Disney, the Viking, definitely weren't happy about that. Thorfinn travels with these band of mercenaries not in spite of his hatred for Askeladd, but because of it, as he's been promised an honourable duel to the death to get vengeance for his father should he achieve the various accolades in war at Askeladd's side. If this sounds like you're getting into an edgy action fest, well, you're probably going to be disappointed. While there are fights, the story itself encompasses so much more than just revenge. It's a multifaceted tale, rich in character, unflinching towards the brutalities of war, with a solid foundation in real history. When you think about historical stories in anime, one name probably springs to mind over and over again.
Nobunaga Oda.
But But unfortunately, this is 11th century Europe in the time of the Vikings and the Danes' invasion of England, so I don't think even Japan can find some convoluted way to insert him into this, unless they fucking isekai him or something. But Vinland Saga is a story that strictly operates within that time period in order to conform to its factual setting. The core narrative itself isn't based on a true story, but everything in the wider world remains true to history, and you can really feel the author's passion for the setting and time period. When reading the manga, I often found myself looking up what kings and wars were mentioned, and sure enough, they were all factually accurate. Hell.
See, that's something I really do like about that timepiece. This timepiece, Vinland Saga. It borrows a lot from history. Like, one thing I had pointed out was like the language barriers. I think that was something that I really liked about this, where it's like in a lot of animes, they will all be speaking the same language, but since they're actually being true to history, there are places where certain languages aren't spoken. Like in this part, they speak English. Over here, they speak Norse, and I think that over here they speak Dutch. I think that was something I really liked about that series. So let's get back into it.
Oh, even a good chunk of the characters in the show are just straight up people from history. Leif Erikson, Prince Canute,
yeah, I know Leif Erikson. That's something I pointed out.
All existed in that time.
Oh, Thorfinn was actually a real character.
Like Askeladd are individuals based on Norse folklore. Very few liberties are taken with the facts in the series, and having all this historical context just adds so much
I thought that part was bullshit.
To the characters and the world. Even when you do have someone like the brick shithouse that is Thorkel casually yeeting a single axe with enough force to make a kebab out of 5 guys. That's 5 people, not 5 greasy burgers. It pushes the boundary of what's possible just enough for you to accept that some of these larger-than-life characters existed in our real-world history, which is technically true. But this is important because it adds a sense of legitimacy to their actions and the events that take place in the world they inhabit. This adds real weight to the stories that are told because a great deal of what these people do can be really hard to swallow. Some of what's shown can be heavier than the things you see in Berserk or Game of Thrones because everything is soaked in an air of realism. There is no veil of fantasy to avert your eyes of the atrocities that you see. There is no clear divide between right and wrong, good and bad. Everything's just portrayed as a part of life, a part of history. Nothing is romanticized.
Yeah, that is something I do like about this one. It is that sense of realism. Like, all right, they actually did borrow from points in history, from certain parts of history, to a point where you might think that this story actually could have happened, minus a few things that were just completely outrageous, and that's done for just to make it look cool, right? But just the storyline itself is something that could be possible, and like I said, they brought all these different elements from it, so that's something else that makes this one stand out too.
And through this brutal, unflinching lens, you get reminded that sometimes reality can be far more unforgiving than the world of imagination. The only thing that's potentially weird about the historical setting, at least in the anime, is how the language barrier is portrayed, because everything is spoken in Japanese. So you have awkward scenes like a kid who speaks in Japanese, which is meant to be Nordic, asking some Frenchmen if there's anyone who speaks Nordic.
No, see, that's a little bit nitpicky.
It's meant to be French, but they don't understand what he's saying despite the fact they're both speaking Japanese, and then there's Thorkel who can speak English and Nordic, which is supposed spoken as Japanese, so you don't know when the Englishman he's speaking to are supposed to be confused about what he's saying, because sometimes he speaks Nordic to the
That's funny, but that's definitely nitpicky.
It's all spoken in Japanese. Oh my God!
They established that it's a different language.
I never thought I'd say this, but would it be too much trouble to hear some good old-fashioned English?
Do you understand?
I can't speak English.
Though while the historical aspect is a nice additional touch, the heart of this series is of course the writing and characters, and I'm glad to say this is some of the best character development you can find anywhere. There is enough depth in each character presented to warrant a full-blown character study that I can't possibly fit in this one video, though what I can focus on is one of the most interesting character dynamics you can find here, which of course is that between Thorfinn and Askeladd. On the surface, Thorfinn seems pretty one-dimensional. His singular linear goal of wanting to win Askeladd's favor enough to be rewarded with a duel is basically all he bangs on about, but it's what you see him struggle with in silence that makes it interesting. Otherwise, him being a moody teenager set on revenge basically means he'd just be Viking Sasuke. Seeing Thorfinn go from this sweet boy to an emotional killer is actually kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
In so many other shows, this could so easily divulge into an edge fest, but here you just feel sad. It's tragic.
Yeah, it is sad because just speaking a little bit more into the anime, it is pretty sad because when you sit back and you think about it, like, dang, he was in this good space because he had his father in his life, and then now that his father was taken from him, he has to switch up instantaneously in order to survive, and in order to accomplish his goal of defeating Askeladd, who's responsible for his father's death, and I guess you could say essentially responsible for Thorfinn becoming who he is.
To see such a joyful kid turn into a pure ball of anger and hatred despite all of his dad's best efforts in his last moments to teach him to literally do the opposite of everything he's doing now.
お前に敵などいない。本当の戦士には剣などいらぬ。
It's kind of reminiscent to how Kratos tried to teach his son in God of Boy, except Kratos truly did give up his weapons for a life of pacifism, and Boy actually had a name. The development of Thorfinn's lust for revenge doesn't pay off until far later in the story though, meaning that the star of this story arc being adapted in the anime is undoubtedly Askeladd. Askeladd is far and beyond the best antagonist in anime this year, and it's not even close. He's a cunning, scheming, manipulative man who paves the way for absolutely atrocious acts, and yet it's nigh on impossible to hate him. He just has this witty charm and charisma that's incredibly infectious. You believe he's the leader of a mercenary gang not because the story says so, but because you yourself can find yourself thinking, man, what a fucking Asker Chad, I'd bloody follow you into battle. His relationship with Thorfinn is complicated to say the least, because nothing speaks daddy issues like being raised by the man who killed your bloody daddy, but it's never explicitly stated how Askeladd views the boy. One moment he can treat him like a complete tool to be manipulated and used, being like, hey laddie, remember that one time I killed your dad? Yeah, that was well bants, wasn't it? Yet other times it can seem like he does actually care about him, perhaps stemming from his deep respect of Thor's. He plays mentor and is
Yeah, somebody, one of my, I guess, watchers or subscribers or commenters, whatever term they fall into, they said that he had respect for his father, which is why he is quote unquote raising him, or is somewhat taking him in without like killing him.
Closest thing Thorfinn has to a guardian who's raising him up, because despite being a manipulative asshole, you have to respect how wise and cunning he is. This is just a slice in what is a series rich with complicated characters who develop through the course of the story. From the rise of Prince Canute to Thorkel being far more introspective than the war-loving brute he initially seems to be, to all the other side characters who are just there to drink a shit ton apparently.
A little bit of the bubbly!
And the role they all play in the saga that unfolds is just so perfectly intertwined with the smaller stories and messages the series explores, because like the characters, the story has layers. Remember in Goblin Slayer when the goblins did a bad thing and people were shocked that the goblins did a bad thing and the series showed the bad thing? Well, I find it funny that the world of Vinland Saga is one just as brutal that doesn't shy away from showing it, and somehow there's a sense of beauty in the storytelling here. The thing that hits you hardest isn't the shock of seeing the raping, murdering and pillaging that is a part of daily life. It's a son so far off the path his father desperately tried to teach him. It's a kind mother being betrayed for showing love and compassion to a stranger.
Yeah, that was sad. That part was sad.
Teaching the war-loving Vikings about love. They're the types of stories that pierce the soul and sticks with you far after the episode or chapter ends. And I think that's the best way I can describe the writing in this.
But I wouldn't classify that as beautiful.
It's not some dramatic roller coaster full of nothing but thrills. It's
like I was saying, I wouldn't classify that as beautiful. I mean, those are actually events that you see those themes actually happen through history. Now, as far as these specific stories happening through history, I wouldn't say that is true, but these themes of, raiding and conquering and destroying, pillaging, and all these violent acts actually did happen, but I wouldn't. And maybe if you're looking at it from a storyline perspective, you could probably see it as beautiful, but then at the same time, it's kind of just like reiterating those stories. And when you sit down and think about it, it's like, I wouldn't classify that as beautiful,
Just powerful. It's raw. It's full of moments that feel so heavy, moments that penetrate so deeply that you often feel the need to stop at the end of an episode or chapter just to be taken aback by what's happened and bask in what you've just experienced. It's a grim tale, but one that's oddly beautiful and optimistic in its outlook. Every so often, you come across a work of fiction that seems to have an air of prestige surrounding it, something that goes beyond character development or story arcs or themes or art or animation, but something that makes it just that much more special. And though there may be other shows you enjoy more, or series you relate to better, or anime or manga that are superior on a technical level, there's some kind of unquantifiable quality you can't quite put your finger on that makes it stand above the rest, but you can feel it in the moment. It's that sense of immeasurable greatness. I felt it the first time I read Berserk, when I caved in to watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes, when I closed the final page of Naoki Urasawa's Monster, and certainly when I was able to first experience Vinland Saga. This is a manga that doesn't come along very often, and one even rarer because its adaptation is doing a great job so far with it. It might not be the widely appealing hype machine that Attack on Titan or Demon Slayer is right now, but it's a tale that will leave a deep impression on those who choose to experience it. It's not the type of story people just watch then forgets about. It's one that will leave an imprint on you long after you finish it, that years later you'll look back on it and think, wow, this was something truly special. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Well, y'all, that is the end. In the blah blah blah. Well, y'all, that is the end of the Stop Sleeping on Vinland Saga. Got a little tongue tied there. You know, that happens a lot. But I'm gonna keep that in there, make it look authentic. I'm not trying to be all picture perfect, you know, like some of these other YouTubers are. But yeah, man, big ups to Geekhook. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. For making this video. Because, you know, there's a lot of points that he did bring out that I've talked about in my reactions or watch with me's on this series of Vinland Saga. Like, it's so many things where it's like the themes and the depth of the characters and the relationships between, you know, some of the characters and, you know, just the overall development of Thorfinn and that and just seeing how this is something that is taken from, or the certain ideas from this is taken from actual history is something that's interesting. And maybe on paper, when you look at it, it doesn't sound like interesting. But when you actually get into it, once you move past the first few episodes and you really get into Thorfinn and his development, that's really when the show, you know, kicks off, in my opinion. So yeah, I would definitely say give this show a shot to anyone who's watching this video and they haven't really sat back and wanted to watch the Vinland Saga. But if you like anime, like the ones he described, like I came right off of Berserk into Vinland Saga, and you know, I wasn't like disappointed. You know, I'm still more so invested in Berserk as opposed to Vinland Saga, but I'm still on the very beginning stages of Vinland Saga, so you know, that might just change. But yeah, like I was saying, definitely don't sleep on the series. The anime is actually pretty good. Don't really have any issues with the way it looks. People always say, you know, it's one of those manga heavy type of animes, like Genku just says, one of those manga heavy ones. So probably I'll get into reading the manga after I finish watching the series, because, you know, like with Berserk, I watched the series and I was really invested. I'm still invested in the story. So, you know, I feel like that's going to happen to me with the Vinland Saga series. But anyways, these are my thoughts. Tell me you guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, follow me on my social media sites. Link to the description box down below. It's Jonny J. I'm out.